what we're saying when we step into the path of Kabbalah is I'm actually ready to receive into my physical body more of my soul, preparing our vessel, our physical vessel, to actually be capable of housing more of our spiritual self. Kabbalah mapping gives you a framework to understand these basic, complicated questions of like, who am I? What am I? Where am I? Like, who are we? Where are we? What are we doing here? What's the point? Like, what's going on? It gives context to all of that. Um, and so it gives you a storyline of a narrative that says, I'm a soul in a body here on a mission. And we get to unpack that quite a bit more of, well, what does that even really mean? And then we get very specific. Now I have this overarching story of who are we? What are we doing here? Okay, I can rest in that. And now I get specific for me, like this lifetime. I specifically have, these specific gifts and these specific goals. And when I'm challenged, there are a few specific things that I can lean into to develop myself to overcome that challenge without it being super complicated. And then if I want to go deeper, then we can go into the story work, which was the third thing I would say, which is, okay, well, but here are my blocks. And so here's a very specific methodology for how to unpack that, still within this framework of these Kabbalistic concepts. What are the four worlds? The four worlds can be understood on a few different levels. So I'll tell it like this. Creation happens on four levels. Those four levels are the four worlds. Creation, whether on the level of the entire universe being created, whether on the level of you and me being created and incarnating into this life, into this form, or whether on the level of I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna create a project, or you're gonna write a song, or we're gonna create a lovely meal for our guests to come over. Our personal creations, all three levels, macro, medium to micro. The process is still the same in this tradition. And those are the four worlds. And so we get to talk about what that is in more mystical forms. And then we also get to talk about what that is in the very practical as well, and how we can relate to it at each step to facilitate our creative processes with more ease. We live in a time and in a culture where many of us are disconnected from the wisdom lineages of our ancestors. And we are at large disconnected from the traditions and the ritual and the magic and the wisdom lineages and of our ancestors. Or we can tap into traditions that kind of carry it, but it feels like it's laden with religion. Or we hear of other people's cultures, but oftentimes at this point, they're kind of just like tributes to, and they're more like not really being lived. They're being just kind of honored as a memory. I carry the wisdom lineage of my ancestors that has stayed lit since it started some 3,000 odd years ago. And I'm able to see through the dogma of the religion that's been overlaid on top of the wisdom lineage of my ancestors without disconnecting it from its source. Still, if I can offer a system that is coherent from its source, that's mine to give, that's my inheritance, so that I can remind you of what you already know that was disconnected to help you reconnect to who you really are and to the memory of what your ancestors already know. Then you now are connected more because it's like, oh, that little memory triggers something and you can receive your way of doing it. The Sefirot are energy centers on both a physical level and a spiritual level. The Sefirot are emanations of the soul. They are attributes of the soul. They are kind of like personality traits that each of us have. They are kind of like personality traits of creator with the Sefirot, and what it really is just a path for self-discovery.